Howdy folks, this is Wandering Mind 25 and we're going to continue this video showing you how to add ROMs to your emulation station as well as update your emulators. Alright, first step we're going to go through is I'm going to show you this application here. This is WinSCP, and what this program does is it allows you to essentially FTP into your emulation station and actually see the file structure in more of a graphical viewpoint, or a view, in a graphical view. If you've ever looked at your SD card when you mount it, the only thing you see is about like 3-4 files, and two of the files are pretty big, and those files actually hold the operating system and all the contents, and the other files are just like text files or something of that configuration based, like a boot INI or something of that nature. So by booting up your SD card in your Raspberry Pi, you can open up an SSH session or whatever the protocol this guy uses, which is SCP, and you'll be able to view the contents of your SD card. So as I said a moment ago, the protocol by default, at least when I downloaded this program, was SFTP. It's better to use the SCP, but either one will work. We already know our host name is Raspberry Pi, username is Pi, and password is Raspberry. So we're going to go ahead and log in. Alright, and here it automatically brings us to the same location that we would normally be seeing when we use PuTTY to log in, or even the console when you are in the emulation station. You hit the F4 key and you're at the terminal screen. Same location, which is the home Pi directory. Your ROMs need to be placed in the RetroPi, ROMs, and then whatever ROM it's associated with, such as Super NES or NES. You just have to drop your ROM into that location. As you can see, I've already dropped quite a few ROMs into my NES directory, and even I have a couple pictures which I'll show you those, or how to do that stuff in a little while. So all you need to do is just simply grab your ROM, which I think I have one conveniently right here. I'm just gonna drag that over. This is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, so I just click and drag into this window right here, release, and then it's going to ask me to copy that file to that location, and we just hit copy and it'll essentially copy that file into this directory structure. Now at this point, if you already had the emulation station up and running, you could just simply reload that screen and that ROM should now be present. Otherwise, you'd have to restart. And in either case, the ROM should be viewable at this point. So next step we're gonna go over is updating your emulators. Okay, and to do that, we go back into our trusty old Pi and we log in. Okay, I'm going to expand the screen just a little bit because we're actually going to have a graphical interface when we actually load this. Alright, now I went back to the A to Z beginner's guide, and this part in the guide, it'll actually tell you to skip it if you already have used the pre-built image, and you very well can. Me, I'd like to download the latest and greatest, with the least amount of work. So I'm using the actual software that was given to me through the pre-build, but by doing this, it'll give me hopefully the closest or the next to best thing for the latest and greatest. So in here, it's telling me to go to the CD RetroPi setup directory. So we're just going to copy that. Okay, now I'm in that directory. I'm going to run this command, which is sudo, that means run. I'm not really sure what the ./ means, but then it wants to run this command right here, which is RetroPi _ setup.sh. So we're gonna paste that into that window and hit enter. Alright, so this is actually the installation of the Raspberry Pi emulation station and all that such. Alright, so I'm going to scroll this over here. I just want to show you one last thing. Just before I launched this setup, it told you to change directory to RetroPi setup. Right now what we're looking at is the ROM section, but I'm going to go back a couple folder structures. Alright, so this is where we started. So essentially we said change directory to RetroPi setup, and then we ran this command right here, or this, this file. So as I said before, you're looking the visual, the graphical file structure of what's actually going on in here. The only thing is you can't run or modify many files in this view without doing the sudo command in a command line, which you can't do inside of a SCP. So that's the reason why we always do it manually over here. Some files you'll be able to get away with it, but for the most part, it'll give you an error when you make your modification. You go to click save, and it'll say, permission denied, or you don't have access, or something of that nature. So, just had to give you a little bit of reasoning there. So anyway, we are now looking at the setup for the RetroPi. Now, if we wanted to do a complete installation, basically you're like reinstalling the OS on top of itself, so it would update any other files and whatnot. You can do the slightly faster, doing the binary based installation, faster but possibly not up to date. So this is all the pre-built stuff, but you're doing it manually. You could do the source base, which basically means it's going to download all the little compilations that I guess everybody's put together that's had the stamp of approval with the software, and then it downloads it, and then the Pi has to compile it, which takes a great deal of time. I started to run it, and I think it took 9+ hours, and it's still never finished. And then we have these two beautiful options right here, update. So we can update the subscript. I think this is primarily for these other options, so that when you update the script, that updates the method of which it downloads, or whatever the files that it might download. So I'm not sure if you actually have to run that, but this right here would be the meat and cheese. Update the RetroPi binaries. That would be your emulators and all the main software that's run in the station. So you can click that. You might have to click yes, I think. I'm not going to click it because I don't want to spend the good hour or so that it takes to do that. I could be wrong about the time span. It might be more like a half hour. I think the last time I did it, it downloaded a 128 meg file, so it might have been a half an hour long. But either way, it's a lot longer than I want to make this video. So we can do that, and it'll update all your binaries. You reboot, and you can come back in here again and continue where we are right now. So another thing I wanted to show you is the setup option. So at this point, if we were to go to setup, and you saw how I had some images in my ROMs. Where's the NES? Okay, you see I have some images. Each of these images is corresponding to a ROM, and so that's what makes this pretty. And that is actually explained in this document as well. It's toward the bottom. Okay, making it look pretty, even the exact words. So, you don't actually necessarily have to run through all this, but you could if you want. So eventually you actually do get to that same point, so we're doing the same step here. So first, you go to the setup, then for whatever reason it's telling you to turn off the emulation station at boot. Now this says, okay, let's backtrack a little bit. Third option, okay, that's correct. And then it says start the fifth option. Well, that's not the fifth option, it's actually the fourth option. So again, remember I was saying in earlier videos that there are a few discrepancies, but common sense will dictate either they messed up here or it's just a newer version. They changed things around a little bit. So it's telling you to go down to the fifth option and essentially turn it off. So we turn it off. Don't really have an off button, but we have original boot behavior. So you click that and you hit OK. The next part will be to run this ES scrapper. Now what this will do, it will go out online, it'll download a database of some sort that will reference all your ROMs and all the games that NES and Super NES and whatnot. And if it can correspond the ROMs that you have with what's in its database, it'll link an image and a little bit of a description or something of that ROM together, and then it'll download. The actual rescrapper option that I have highlighted over here, this is apparently the better option. However, this didn't work for me. I ended up having to do the CRC option, apparently because the naming structure of the ROMs that I have, it didn't like that. But the CRC option did do a little, did better. It actually found some ROMs at least that it could link up. There's another application out here that this thing references. If it doesn't work, it's because of the name. Maybe it's not this document, but you can do a mass renaming of all your ROMs. I haven't actually found out what that is, or at least I did find one, but I couldn't quite figure out how to get it to work. So that's something I'll figure out at a later date. But you run this, it'll show you a terminal command prompt type screen, and you'll see each file that it finds a corresponding ROM name and a database entry, and then downloads the image and whatnot. And then it brings you back to a similar screen here. Another thing, in this screen right here, you can change the width of your image. If it's too small or too big, in the emulation screen you can actually make that image bigger or smaller if you want. I have it at 275. I thought it was 300 and something, but maybe it dropped it down because it was too high. But you can modify that as you please. So I'm going to cancel for now. Alright, and when you're done, turn the emulation station back on for a boot. Otherwise, when you boot up your Pi, you'll just be looking at a blank screen on your TV. It won't actually do anything. But thankfully, all you have to do is just load a PuTTY session, make your change back through here, and you're good to go. So let's cancel. And we'll cancel. In that case, at the end of that, make sure you reboot before you go any further. Alright, that should just about do us. Until my next video. See you then.